Just to jump off the bat, like, the hell is GOATA? What does it mean?
So GOATA is greatest of all time actions or greatest of all time athletes. Basically, what we do is we've studied from how a baby develops, how super athletes move, how indigenous cultures move, and kind of figured out that there's some similarities and some things that all work together that all these athletes have and all these people have that keep them durable for as long as possible, well into their 70s, 80s, even 90s and 100s. I mean, we've seen some of your super elder class marathon runners that are in their hundreds, 104, 105, that no knee braces or anything, that are still out running. And I mean, you have to ask yourself why. So we've kind of seen all of those patterns across the board, all the way from the way the babies move into those 105-year-old athletes that they're both moving in the same direction.
So what are some things you really uncovered that have kind of changed your line of thinking, I guess?
So basically what we teach is there's two pivot points on the bottom of the foot. There's the pivot point that's on the inside of the big toe, kind of on that big toe ball of the foot. And there's a pivot point out towards kind of that fourth and fifth metatarsal on that outside ball of the foot. And by using that outside portion of the foot, you're actually creating a more secure structure for your ankles, ball and socket to sit up nice and high, to where you can access rotation not only in the foot and ankle complex, but from the shin, the thigh, up into the hip. Whereas if we start to play into that big toe drive, we create sort of this lockdown ball and socket that doesn't really have that access to rotate. And then we start to have to create compensations where we overturn on the back. We have to incorporate muscles that aren't kind of in that way that the body's sewn to move. And then that's putting constant stress on the joints, the tissue, and just it causes not only instabilities in the swing or throwing or whatever it is that you're trying to do athletically, but over time, as much as you're walking, it kind of starts to deteriorate those joints. And that's where you see new hips, new knees, all of these things come into play. For me, it was actually the two bottom disc in my spine. I was what we call a severe reverse mover, which is that big toe drive. I was doing a lot of heavy lifting, as you probably know. I was heavy into that WEC method stuff, and I blew out my back twice doing the heavy lifting. Didn't learn the first time, so
So
it
just
was.
for clarity, as a layman here, what do you mean by like big toe drive? What's that mean?
So big toe drive, meaning like if I place pressure onto the big toe and then try to move forward through space, or try to do anything that's forward locomotion, whether it be the walk, the run, the throw, the swing, anything like that. If I'm incorporating what we call, so if I slip my foot, if this was my foot here and we see that nice high arch, if I collapse this in this way, it's going to kind of cause it to spin in this way. Whereas if I sit this arch nice and high, it's going to kind of promote this release around this way. So when I talk big toe drive, that's kind of this arch flattening in. And then when we go to drive through space, it kind of drives in with that collapsed arch and then sends that back half in reverse.
It's interesting. So is that something that most people do wrong naturally?
That's probably about 99% of your population. And it's not really something that we're born with. It's kind of something that through sitting in chairs, through kind of closing in our feet into those shoes, over time, we just kind of develop and kind of become this chair that we've been sitting in our whole lives. And we kind of feed those bad behaviors. Another thing that we teach is called back chain dominance, which is going to be a long decompressed spine, which makes the hips sit kind of back behind the rib cage, as opposed to a front chain dominant person, which is going to be more of your hips stacked underneath the rib cage or even pressed forward, which is going to put a lot of pressure on that lower back. So the back chain dominance that we teaches that long decompressed spine, which is going to give you the most access to rotate those joints and access those hip ball and sockets properly.
Gotcha. How is your back doing, by the way? You getting better?
Oh, fantastic, actually. I hadn't been playing as much golf just because I've been busy teaching lately. I just opened up an academy down here in Sugarland. But the times that I do play, I went and played TPC Louisiana the other day while I was in there for the GOATA certification. And I mean, swing speed's still up. Last time I checked at 127 miles an hour. I've got no pain after I play golf. During playing golf, I go out and work on my ranch. I got no issues. So back's feeling great. I just make sure that I'm always kind of staying in what we call that singularity of movement, where I'm not really putting that stress on my joints anymore as I move through space.
So, doing what you do, and obviously your dad's such an accomplished instructor. I mean, how much do you see this in golf? Like people doing just even
For
in the
golf, it's a
motion, minus the
huge issue.
workouts.
I mean, when I first introduced this stuff to my dad, he kind of looked at me for a second and was like, man, we've been teaching golf wrong for a really long time. I know a lot of the things that we've been taught in the teaching world over the years have been kind of that like inside edge, push off the inside edge of the foot. We've come to kind of a wider stance with kind of keeping the head stable. And it's kind of outside of, if you don't have extreme access to those joints, then over time, that's just going to kind of break down on you. And that's where I think we're starting to see more and more of those injuries on tour. Like you and I were talking, we see a lot more of the lifting going on, a lot more deadlifts and stuff. When would we ever want to program a hip thrust into the golf swing? You know what I mean? We always saw, those drills that Tiger used to do where he'd keep the butt back and really try to feel that space created with that long decompressed spine like we talk about. So you see the greatest in the world kind of going the other way, where now we're starting to do all this heavy lifting where we're programming this hip thrust move under heavy load. And I think it's starting to kind of feed into the golf swing, which is going to, of course, put stress on the lower back, which we see a ton of. We see a lot of knee braces, you see a lot of knee tape, you see a lot of shoulder issues, a lot of wrist issues. And I think that's going to stem from that lifting engine or that reverse engine kind of being programmed into the swing and the walk. And these guys are out there walking, 6, 7, 8 miles a day, at least 5, 6 days a week. They're getting the most reps out of anybody. And if you're repping out a bad behavior in your walk, every step is kind of a little more damaging on the joints and the tissue.
Yeah. So like when you were talking to your dad about this stuff, what was the realizations he had as a coach? Like what were some things that he might have changed from what you were showing him?
So he's actually in the certification process right now, which is good. We were teaching a guy that he had been struggling with in his 60s, that for a year he could not get him to stop going over the top. He just had no access to his hip. And I was sitting in on a lesson one day, and I had just come back from the GOATA certification for probably the 5th time. And he told the guy to turn his back toe out to get more access to his hip. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you doing? Like, that's not the way that the ankle structure works. That's not the way that the shin and thigh are supposed to rotate. Like, you're basically you're causing the over the top move. And we fixed those things. We straightened up his feet, narrowed him up a little bit, got him to where so if I have the ankle sitting high like this can kind of rotate and load more. If you imagine that as the leg, and I'll just show it to you. Here you go. So if I'm sitting this to where I turn this out and I go to rotate, well, I don't really have as much access to the turn. I'm going to have to keep the head still and really try to create this upper body turn. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I keep this straight, sit this nice and high and keep the weight out of the heel, well, now all of a sudden this can rotate in singularity with the hip, and I can create that space. And then another thing we teach is when we do that, as we load, we kind of let that head float into that column. So now all of a sudden, this heavy head complex up here is stacked on top of this hip joint, on top of the knee, on top of the ankle, and everything can kind of rotate as it should around those ball and socket joints. as we move through space. And that's just kind of the same thing we teach in our fitness. So we're just making sure that we're always programming that good behavior as opposed to that hip thrust behavior that you see in the gym now, where now we're finishing up here. Well, if my max load is programmed into that hip thrust behavior, when I'm going to make a golf swing at 120, 130 miles an hour, I'm going to favor that hip thrust motion as opposed to the good behavior that I need for that long decompressed spine.
So keep long decompressed spine in mind, because I want to talk about that and what that means. But so going back to what you just showed me. So, and that's something we've taught us a long time. I'm guilty of it too. Like you want to turn more flare the feet. I mean, that's been long thing. So you're saying it's not flaring the feet, it's more where you're putting pressure on the foot.
Yes. So when we go to flare, I want to keep the foot straight so that I can send this back to get access. That's that long decompressed spine that I'm talking about, where all of this is long and back where I have access. I don't want to turn this foot out where when I go to try to access the spine, see how now this is going to kind of kick me in this direction. I have to kind of flex this knee to go back. I want to be able to rotate and get this all to work back. And the tough part where we were talking about getting the weight into the foot, if I go and I dump this low to do it, see how that kind of restricts how much I've got here. So if I roll this up and I go to rotate, that kind of stops my ankle complex. Everything's kind of sitting in low. That ball and socket kind of gets crunched in. So we want to sit that up nice and high where this inside ankle bone here is higher than that outside ankle bone, and put that pressure up from this 2 through 5. We kind of teach that there's a tripwire right here on this big toe and a tripwire back here behind this ankle complex. So we load this whole strong outside portion of the foot. And then as you go to rotate and send the butt back, well, now I have access to create space and I can load the leg properly and let it release properly, as opposed to if I go dump this way, well, now when I go to release, that's going to kind of take this in this direction. That's where you see a lot in Tiger where he did that bank foot. It would kind of kick in a little this way. Well, we know all the injuries that Tiger had. So that's
well, so okay, so we can use Tiger as an example because he's a fun talking point. You know, how much of his though? I mean, there's times. I mean, Hank Haney talked about how he was all in the Navy SEALs training. I mean, the dude was beating the crap out of his body. So, how much of that was fitness versus how much of that was the swinging?
So that's where you kind of play into the walk as well. So if I go to show you the walk here, just like in the swing, if I've got my feet out and I go to walk, well, now all of a sudden my heels are kicking in this way. Even if I have my foot straight and I dump into this way, well, now all of a sudden all of this ankle complex, because of this big toe drive and the way that the body's sewn and the bones are structured, if I go to rotate off of this big toe, it's going to spin in, and this whole side right here is kind of kicking in the other direction as this is trying to go forward. Whereas if I set these both nice and high, land with my head over my foot into this ankle column here, well, now all of a sudden this backside is more likely to favor this release over to the front side as opposed to going the other way. So it's kind of just working into now, you know, Tiger, my dad was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time there with Tiger, and Tiger was running like 4 miles before every day that they used to go play with Noda. He was doing heavy lifting. He was doing the SEALs training. You can actually go look back at Tiger as a kid. He kind of got decoded from playing golf at such a young age when he learned to walk. He never really had that right ankle complex or that left one, but the right one was a lot worse. So a lot of that in what we teach would probably come up as an overuse injury on the left side. And that right side also took a lot of a beating because of the way that he landed his foot. And just the amount of reps that he put in, plus when he started to do the lifting, it just kind of, it was a matter of when's it going to happen. So
how predictably can you look at somebody and be like, you're going to get hurt?
I mean, in our assessment process, I can tell you, it's literally, you can get the video filmed in a minute and a half, and I'll send you back an assessment, and we can tell if you're injury prone within that 1.5 minute video.
Really? Wow. So kind of starting, look, I guess we can talk about a couple different classes of golfers, but I kind of want to attack it from the actual like motion and how people are coached versus, like what they do in the gym and working out. So, I mean, competitive golf, I mean, fitness is in there, right? So like I said, I'm a dummy when it comes to it. So I always just send people out and
Yeah.
it's been tragedy. I've had some kids come back hurt, had some kids really excel. So it's like, there's got to be a lot of trust there because I mean, you're really dealing with some stuff. So you got to know what you're doing. So, from the training side, what are some things people really need to be cautious of if we're talking about like competitive golfers? Now, I guess let me ask that one different way. Like people tend to look for golf specific training, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that really a thing? Because I've always looked at it like you want to train the whole body and train muscle balance. But again, I'm a dummy. I don't know what I'm talking about.
So what we would tell you is that the only thing that's really golf specific is swinging a golf club. Practicing your craft is, I mean, mastering your craft is what golf is. I mean, we can't do that in a gym. We can't mimic that anywhere else. That you can't teach feel and creativity on a golf course in the gym. So why not build the training around what you're trying to do, which is you're walking a ton, you're swinging at an incredible speed, changing directions. We don't really need all of that heavy lifting, deadlifting, the heavy back squats, the braced core stuff, because we're not ever really trying to do that in the swing. We want to be as loose and be able to flow through with as much speed as possible. Is there a benefit to building strength? Absolutely, and we do build strength. I mean, we're if you look at the guys that come out of GLS performance training out in Marrero, where GOATA is located, we're training NFL players. There's MLB players in there. Like these guys are by no means weak people, but there's a right and a wrong way to build strength, and you got to ask yourself what you're trying to do. And unless you're trying to be a heavy lifter or you're trying to do backflips because of that hip thrust motion, there's really no translation in that heavy weight training, the pulling weight from the ground like that into the golf swing.
Does that, I mean, is there an avocation for it? Like why that type of training would be good? I mean, does it have benefit or is it more just looks like the right thing to do?
I think over time it's just kind of become what's been taught as the right thing to do. That we've got into kind of these pressure plates and everything, and I think people have gotten lost in what ground force really is, and ground force is that torque created from the ground. And when we're looking at these pressure plates, like it's really just I touch the scale, it tells me that I touched the scale. It's not really helping me understand how my ball and sockets and my joints are all creating that pressure into the body and in a safe way. Like we don't know whether or not that load that they're measuring is safe. We don't know whether or not that person is going to be safe down the road. We're just using the data that we have and kind of feeding it back because that's the world that we live in. We kind of love seeing numbers, but creating torque is that ability to rotate and stack all of those joints and everything and rotate from the ground up, being able to rotate everything in the body up the chain properly to create the max load that's going to be able to release in the best way, I think. I think we've gotten a little lost in the numbers and the screens, and I think we just need to go back to kind of what's really going on down there in the body, like what's happening. I think another thing that hurts is we're always looking at what's happening in the golf swing and people wearing shoes. So we're not really interested in what's happening in the foot and ankle complex. A lot of these guys are wearing pants, so we never really see that on the tour. But there's a lot going on in that foot. There's a lot of bones. There's a lot of surface area down there. And there is an optimal way to get that to all set and rotate properly.
So, I mean, I could keep going down wormholes of questions here. So like shoes, right?
Yeah.
Like how much of this, and I know there was a push for a little bit. I know people started talking about like barefoot running, and I know foot got some attention, it seemed like, in the golf world for a little bit and then just kind of went away. But it made a lot of sense to me. Like I've never worn golf shoes. I can't stand them because I hate how stiff they are. I've always
Yeah.
just wore just regular gym shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not. I mean, if I played 100 some rounds a year, I mean, I play like 5 times a year tops nowadays because of my schedule. But if I played more, maybe I get hurt. But I've never been hurt in golf ever. And I've just worn tennis shoes, and that's all I've done. I never really worked out or anything. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right or wrong, but maybe that stems from some of my just beliefs on some things. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been wearing the Vivo Barefoot Trail shoe on the golf course for like 8 years now, just because it's got some grip. It doesn't have any less grip on the bottom of it than your spikeless golf shoes nowadays. But it's got a real nice wide toe box. It's a zero drop shoe, so it's real minimalistic. It's flat to the ground. Um, and that's what I wear on the golf course. Off the golf course, I wear something with a little cushion now. We got to remember that the concrete, the hardwood floors, the tile and stuff really isn't a natural surface that we're supposed to be walking on. So we do have to give ourselves a little bit of a break as we're walking around. But as far as golf shoes go, I would say just something with a wide toe box. I know True Links, True Links Wear, I think is the company. They make a wide toe box, zero drop golf shoe. Um, I think that might be the only one out there that's kind of been foot focused. I know I saw there's like a square toe shoe or something like that. I haven't really seen how wide it is, but anything where you can kind of give your foot a little room to wiggle. And I would say with not too much heel support. I don't want something that's going to cause me to want to load weight into the heel. I want to tend to stay away from that and really try to load that forefoot, and something with a little cushion in the heel is going to kind of promote me sinking back into it a little bit.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's
Gotcha. So again, I kind of bounce all over the place, but getting back to like, especially juniors that are, or, any competitive player that's getting into fitness. I mean, what's some things they really should be doing? What do you see as the most beneficial? And again, the big question is always going to come up is how do I create more speed? How do I do that through the gym? And then obviously, how do we do that in the golf swing? You see like what Bryson DeChambeau's doing. You see some of these guys starting to heel lift. You see people jumping off the ground. Like, can you decode some of that for us?
yeah, absolutely. So for kids, I would say just stay on the ground, keep running around, keep playing. The best thing for kids to develop speed is to play multiple sports. We always teach, go hit balls at the batting cages, go play basketball with your friends, go do things that are gonna keep you running around and creating good behaviors. As far as what I have all of my kids doing, like while they're on the road training and stuff, you can see right now I'm sitting down kind of in this rocker behavior. So I'm always trying to create this inside ankle bone high, outside pivot point behavior. So I just have them doing simple groundwork where they're just kind of rocking here. They rock side to side, working the heads into the columns. We work the hips. We can work in some calf raises. I have them do work on the wall. And all of the stuff that we do can be done without weight, which is what's great. I mean, I haven't had any of my guys lifting over, I would say, 25 pounds, doing anything in the gym in, gosh, since I started this GOATA stuff. I just had a kid texting me that I started working with 3 weeks ago that I was like, hey, I really think you need to stop doing the gym stuff that you're doing. We need to move forward with just doing the groundwork stuff. I promise you're not going to lose any speed. And he just texted me last night and said he won districts. So it's crazy because this year, what also made my dad really get further into it is we had probably 5 or 6 kids, D1 players, that were COVID had hit. We got heavy, and they got heavy into the lifting stuff at their gym. And they came back, and every single one of them was losing speed. And we were what's going on? What are you doing? And they're just, well, I don't know. I'm more into the gym. We're doing more deadlifts. And he told them all, just stop deadlift. You can do all the other stuff. Just stop deadlifting for me. Let's see what it does. Every single one of them picked their speed back up. Johnny Kiefer, that goes to Baylor, picked his speed back up and 2 more miles an hour to get to 130. And that's simply just by removing one of the bad behaviors. That's You have to remember, if we're trying to create speed in rotation and I'm trying to go this way, but in the gym I'm going this way, well, now I'm confusing my body under max load. So it's kind of like when you do the heavy lifting, because I saw the same thing. I was doing all the heavy lifting. I was picking up speed. I was playing great, but I was real inconsistent and I was hurt. So it was kind of like my performance was great. I was winning, but at what cost? So we're just trying to keep these kids healthy for as long as possible. Like, I'd love to see them out 80. It's more important for me if I were to see Bryson out being able to play on the senior tour than just hammering away at his body right now and have to go under the knife. You see guys like Brooks that, yeah, they've had great success, but how many surgeries are we going to have before he can't do that anymore? Or Tiger, look at what we're witnessing with Tiger. If we just could have cleaned up from the foot level, understanding how to load and release everything properly, I mean, the guy would still be playing golf at a high level without pain right now, I think, or at least a lot less of it.
So what's the most common one? And maybe you already covered this, but and again, if you're listening to this and you can't see the video, I'll link to this video so they can see your movements. But what's the most common one that people can implement really quick that they might not be doing?
I would say there's 2 things that really you should focus on, and that's one, getting your feet stacked underneath you with the big toe or the second toe straight. And what I mean by underneath you is just your feet, your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, all stacked within what we call columns. That's going to be the biggest one. Then look down at your feet. You're going to have a little bony landmark on the outside and a little bony landmark on the inside. We want that inside ankle bone to sit much higher than the outside ankle bone. And that's going to set that pressure on that kind of second metatarsal through the fifth metatarsal on that outside ball of the foot and that blade. The next thing I would say is, if you can imagine yourself kind of sitting at the counter and you thrust your hips towards the counter. We don't want the hips thrust towards the counter. We want to be like grandma with the hips back away from the counter. So what that does is we want to make sure that we get the ear, the hip, the knee, the ankle from the side view all stacked on top of each other with the butt sitting a little bit back.
Can you or even show me that? You've said kind of the ankle higher a few times. What do you mean by that?
So actually, I have a picture right here. So I don't know if you can see this. So this is going to be your inside ankle bone low, where this inside, or I'll show you. So if you take a look at this bony landmark that's right here, and there's a bony landmark on this outside of the foot, we want to make sure that we get this big toe or second toe pointed directly straight. And then you can kind of play around with hitting that trip wire. You can see what that does to everything and kind of sends it inside. And then send it up as high as you can, and then just kind of rest that big toe on the ground. And just rest all that pressure kind of on these outsides. And as opposed to if I sink this low, you'll see that trip wire kind of goes and this inside ankle bone kind of climbs lower. So high, low, you can kind of see what that does up above the structure here. I just want to sit that nice and high, get everything pointed dead straight, and then our columns.
So in the golf swing, again, we've always talked about swaying is bad, getting the weight to the outside of that foot is bad. Is that promoting that, or what's the take on that?
So I think what happens is people don't really understand how to load the hip properly. So there's a difference between me swaying out this way and not rotating into the hip, and me
Mhm.
setting this structure high and then turning into it. So I think what happens is you see a lot of people that'll start here and then roll to the outside, or they'll get the weight in the heel and then they can't really rotate. So they just kind of sway out of it. So
Mhm.
by putting this pressure in this forefront of the foot, I can actually drive this way into the ground and create that opposing force that sends the butt back and away.
Hmm. Interesting. I know I'm gonna definitely be playing with some of this stuff when we get off this, but that's really, I mean, it's interesting stuff just in terms of the movements. And I've always like intuitively kind of known in the setup to get like I've never really thought that the setup was taught well in golf. Like I always see the shoulders and the basically the sternum or the top of the spine too far over
Yeah.
essentially, and the hips sit too far back. Like I always see that when people try to tilt. And like again, when the hips are too far back, they're always gonna those positions are always gonna recorrect anyway. And we're gonna see that forward thrust. They can't turn. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So you're saying you see too far this way?
Yeah, because if the hips are sitting back, that's already a pretty unbalanced position or not a very
Yeah.
structurally
So
sound position, right?
I think it kind of depends on where the pressure is in the foot again. So what we're trying, and also I would say that the grip structure has a lot that influences kind of where that body has the ability to create space. So if I get this and it gets a little weak, or it gets just it's not quite strong enough to set and load properly,
Mhm.
then when I have to go and rotate back, I can't really create that space like I'm supposed to. I'll have to roll off of it, or I'll have to come straight up this way and then drop it under. So a
Mhm.
lot of people will have kind of that weak structure that'll go back and then have to kind of dump into it to get back to the ball. We teach a really strong grip with the ability to just kind of rotate into it. And then from there, you can pivot and turn through on those balls of the feet and just kind of keep those hip pockets back and continue to rotate.
So you like the left hand a little stronger
We do. We teach a
for a
strong
right-handed
left
player.
hand grip.
For a right-handed player,
Yes.
yeah, got you. Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely got to mess with that. And like I said, if people aren't watching this, they should to see your movements because it's interesting stuff. I mean, this is I've never heard it before. Um, so again, going back into the gym and speed training. I mean, what are the essentials for speed training? Like I've heard anything from just grab a club and swing hard. I understand the playing multiple sports stuff. You obviously invented true speed, which we can talk about,
Yeah.
which I love. I use that in my academy. So where is the basis? I mean, I wish I could say everybody's just going to go do all these things, but a lot of times we're going to get the people that don't have the time or just the interest, and they just want to get speed. So is it swinging the speed sticks? Is it just getting your driver swing as hard as you can? Is it stuff in the gym? I mean, what's your take?
So I would say it's creating strong, durable tissue, and then doing. I like the. I mean, obviously, we've created the true speed for overspeed training. I think that's a great concept of kind of that underspeed, overspeed protocol with a golf club in your hand. Uh, we created true speed to be able to kind of train lag and create that shallowness in the golf swing, as opposed to getting the hands overly involved when you're trying to create speed. So I think it's just real important to try to mimic. If you're trying to create speed in the golf swing, we've got to make sure that what we're swinging at a high speed is actually going to be what we're trying to do on the golf course. Because otherwise, we're just training the nervous system to do something that's not going to it's not going to hold up with what we're trying to do. So I would say, I mean, with us, we're trying to create that strong durability. What we have a saying that Gilly, the creator of GOATA, or the founder of GOATA, said is explosivity without durability is imbecility. It's kind of foolish to think that we can create all of this speed and keep sustaining it at a high level for this long period of time without durable tissue and strong tissue to be able to continue to keep building. I mean, otherwise, all we're doing is at a high speed, just slowly starting to chip away at something until it blows up. So just making sure that you're, number one, feeding that GOATA pattern that we see is that inside ankle bone high behavior. We want to feed that into our walk and kind of change our walking behavior, because that's where we're getting the most reps is walking every day. And that's kind of across the board. If you think about every step you take as a rep, well, everybody's getting at least, I'd say, 3,000 to 5,000 steps a day. That's a lot of reps if we were to look at it in a gym setting.
How are people walking wrong? Because now I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah. I would say there's a lot of feet out, a lot of inside ankle bone low behavior is what I would say. There's a lot of people that are real pressed forward in their hips, kind of with a stable braced core spine instead of that free, loose side to side behavior, kind of that swag walk like you see Michael Jordan. I would say those are the main things, and that reverse behavior again. So if you see a lot of people that get these feet way out and then they just kind of get stuck in this forward press behavior where the heel just kind of spins in. So it just kind of feeds in this little out walk as opposed to that straight foot behavior where we just kind of swivel back and forth from column to column.
So should people be consciously thinking about just keeping your foot forward? Is that a simple way to do that?
If you simply just focus on keeping your foot straight and your inside ankle bone higher than the outside ankle bone as you walk, not only on the step, but on the pull through as well, that's all we're looking for really in the walk.
Interesting.
And what's cool with GOATA is, like once we're teaching that behavior, because we're trying to do is change the behavior in the body to where it's constantly moving in that flow pattern. We can go walk and carry our bag. We can push a cart. We can squat and read putts. We can tee up the ball, all within that safe, durable movement pattern. And now all of a sudden, instead of those 3, 5, 10,000, 20,000 reps that we were taking in that bad behavior has all of a sudden turned into a good rep. So now we're just building tissue as we're simply walking through space.
All right, so I gotta ask you another one that's been burning in my mind because, especially I just it's been so much more prevalent in the girls that I've coached over time. They just have had back issues. We talked about it a little. I have my theories of why, but the response that usually comes back when they go to get checked out or evaluated is their core is weak. I don't know. I mean, it seems almost like a cop out, but maybe that's true. Like
here's my question. What is the core?
Well, that seems like something that's been long debated. And I mean, even going deeper into that, I mean, like there was a guy on Rogan's podcast recently talking about like knees over toes training. And he said that like just changed his life, but he had so many trainers saying he physically couldn't do it. Like he was a basketball player. And the trainer was like, I'm not going to let you even in the gym if you're going to do that type of training. But it like revolutionized his life. And now he's teaching people to do that. It's just like, to me, the contradictories are crazy, and then it becomes like, who do you listen to? And if you listen to the wrong thing, like, is that going to screw you over?
Yeah, that's kind of the world we live in now, right? Everybody's got a microphone. Everybody's got a camera in front of them. It can be shared millions of times in a matter of seconds. So,
well, and that's just why I like to talk to people. And again, like almost like Rogan, I just want to hear opinions and I want to, find out what's really the best, because at the end of the day, as a coach, I'm trying to bring the best info to my players, and I will never have an ego that says I know everything. Like I'm always trying to figure out what can be better, what's going to protect you. Like I can't even tell you how just painful it is to hear some, 8th grader hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's happening at a younger age. And you have to ask yourself, well, what's being introduced more and more at these young ages? And it's been the weightlifting. We've kind of gradually gone from high school weightlifting was kind of just like the heavy athlete thing to do. And then it's made its way down into middle school. And you've even got these young kids that are sitting in the gym and you have to, like, why is a 12-year-old shredding their knee? That should never happen. Like, why does a 14-year-old have back pain? That should never, these are kids. That just shouldn't be happening. So what I would say to the whole, like, core being weak thing is the core is back through here. All of this fascia back here, all of this strong tissue that sits around the spine, when we're going to access this rotation and everything, that's where the core is. This is what we want to be strong. This is going to be strong from this being strong. We do a lot of cat crawling. We do a lot of crawling on the ground. We do a lot of movement-based core work where you're really working all of this back chain is what we're calling, and you're kind of getting this for free. So we're just training that 99% to be that security system on the outside, so that when we go to incorporate the inside, well, now this isn't just going to give in to this collapsed behavior. It's going to stay nice and taut, and we can just stay strong as we go to use that core. And the whole core brace thing, when do we really ever want to be stiff when we get to the golf ball? Like, I don't want to have to brace my core in a stable setting. I'm in a side bend, I'm rotating through space. So why am I bracing the core in this stiff behavior? That's only going to train that nervous system again to, under high speed, under heavy load. Now, when I get to the golf ball, I'm going to really try to brace my core. I'm going to really thrust the hips. And that's where you see kind of this unnatural move that's happening at impact, that just something in the body's got to take the force, and it's what's the weakest, what's the most used. Something's got to take it at impact, and a lot of times for these kids, it's the lower back.
So what are the things that you like then to help kind of protect that lower back, I guess we'll say? I think you just went through a few of them, but just for a little more clarity.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing we do is we're always working kind of this butt back and the chest forward behavior. So, like, I'll start everybody off. If we're just in this child rocker position, I'll just have them raise the butt up off the ground, keep the chest forward and kind of the belly button pointed towards the ground, and then just pull a plate to the chest. And just like a 10-pound plate, and we'll just sit here and hold an ISO for time and try to drive all this further away to create that stable position, so that now when I get up, well, now I've created that same behavior where this butt's sitting back, it's sitting above the rib or the ankle and the knee. My inside ankle bones are high, and now I'm ready to move through space in that same behavior that I've built that core. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of cat crawling, a lot of baby crawls. We do some push-up work, not the standard push-ups. We kind of work everything in that back chain behavior. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where our core is our core is to protect that spine.
Yeah. What's funny to me is, so we did a couple of podcasts with a Navy SEAL commander. He was in the SEAL teams for 20 years. And one thing he said that just kind of made me laugh. He goes, dude, we train people with a log and a beach.
Yeah.
And he's like, we have probably some of the most finely fit athletes in the world. Like,
yeah,
because I was kind of asking him about some of that stuff too. And he's like, dude, it can be so basic if you just use body weights and natural motions. So I thought that was fascinating too.
Well, if you look at these indigenous cultures, like when would we ever need to pull 400 or 500 pounds from the ground? And if we did, when would we rep it out? Like, it wouldn't have been something. And if I'm living in a culture and I'm building a society, I'm not going to go try to pick up a log that's 500 pounds as many times as possible. And then if I can't get it, be like, well, I'm just going to have to work my way up till I can go get that 500-pound log. Like, I'm just going to go ask for help. So in the world that we're living in, we're not ever pulling that much weight from the ground in really anything that we do. So it's not really something that needs to be trained as a behavior.
Yeah, interesting. So on the other side, what about something that's always kind of made sense to me, but like plyos, like plyometrics, jump training, stuff like that. I mean, where do you stand on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, we had guys in the gym down there in New Orleans the other day that were doing 50-inch box jumps with weight vests on, all within that same movement behavior. What we do is we teach that when you're going to load, we kind of set this all nice and high again with everything stacked within our columns. As we sit the butt way back, we open all of this up. There's your landing or your bow that we call it. where everything's kind of loading this energy. And then we have the corner where we just kind of release everything around the knee capsule point kind of across from each other as those inside ankle bones sit and climb nice and high. So we just teach that same behavior. So if I'm going to go to jump, it's going to be load and release, as opposed to just trying to jump using whatever I can to jump. So all we're doing is we're creating that same jumping behavior. We just do so in a safe and durable setting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like now that I think about it, like my time as a basketball player and trying to jump as high as I could, I can just even picture myself getting into the toes, trying to jump off of that.
Yeah, you would never do anything athletic in your heels. I mean, everybody, if you're standing around right now, just go try to jump on your heels and tell me whether or not you would try to do something from that position. Like everybody's known, bad feet, bad athlete, but we just didn't know why or kind of what was going on. And now, with the invention of the iPad, we've got all this slow motion video. We've kind of figured out why.
So what about the left foot being flared out for a right-handed player? I mean, that's something, regardless of the right hip, and you explained that really well with the turning. Like I can't, if I square my left foot, I can't get around. Like my foot will like spin off the ground.
So the left foot's kind of a reset leg. As we load into the backswing, you'll notice, I think Brandel Chambly in one of his books or something talked about how 48 out of the last 50, I think, money leaders in the world all lifted their lead heel on the backswing. The two that didn't were Nick Faldo, who hit it a little bit shorter than he should have for his size, and Tiger, who, we saw all the injuries. So that reset leg kind of, as we rotate into that backswing and try to load up all this energy into this backswing, it just kind of plays and goes with that backswing to try to sync everything up to get ready to catch that load that we're about to send it. So with that front leg, you'll see a lot of guys that'll lift it and then it'll kind of move and reset out. I would say if you keep it straight, it allows for the best synchronization into the backswing, just because we've got the backswing knee straight as well. But what you'll also see is a lot of guys that don't have the ability to catch all of that speed into that ankle complex yet. So spinning it out is where they start to, you'll see that catch kind of like where Bryson gets into the heel real early. You'll notice that ankle is just not ready for that speed that he's created. So it's trying to save his knee from shredding is what's happening. So we're just trying to kind of slowly work that ankle complex to be able to accept that speed. We don't teach the foot being out, but it'll end up out for a lot of people, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I just know, like, if I just turn my foot square, I can't turn around them. And that's assuming my hip is just tight as hell.
I would say as long as you're making sure that you're catching towards that outside front ball of that foot, then that's really what's the important thing. You can kind of play around with that position to figure out where the best way to catch that energy is.
Can you show me what you mean by catch that energy?
Yeah. So if I'm going into my downswing here and I have to catch this. So some people, if I go this way, I'm not going to be able to catch into that forefoot as much. I'm going to be more likely to catch into this inside. So the more I get it turned out, the less I'm going to be likely to get towards this outside of the foot. But if I go and I load and then just kind of let this play and stay loose and then go to release and catch all this into this front side, well, now all of a sudden, as I go to rotate, this is kind of just going to keep turning and gripping and grabbing as the butt's going back further. So as I go through, I'm just trying to play this to where I can catch into this inside ankle bone high setting and be able to release around and still keep going and release. And a lot of people, you'll see it'll come off the ground and kind of reset, especially for the long drive guys. They're just trying to figure out how to catch this into this ankle to be able to rotate without it going low and having to shred and then kick back this way. And that's where like lead leg block, like the block leg stuff, like that lead leg extension, trying to snap the knee. A lot of that's really bad for golfers. I mean, I know my dad said when Tiger was trying to work on that it absolutely destroyed his knee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we want to be able to post and kind of catch that. I've always kind of called it like a step. You know, I want to step and then be able to push off.
Well,
but
and what
you're
it
saying
is
where
is
you catch that step.
Transferring energy.
Yeah, for sure. So it's very similar to like a step and throw, but you're saying like where you're catching that foot is important. So having the ankle bone higher and more to the would you call it, inside or outside of the foot?
Yeah, it's towards the outside of the foot, so that it's, if you look at the bottom of the foot here, kind of that second through that blade right here, that's where we're trying to catch, as opposed to in this tripwire setting right here. You can even see how there's kind of like a little wire right here where if I dump that low, it just kind of blocks all of this ankle in.
Man, that stuff's crazy, man. I mean, it's
just trying to
it's really cool
best
stuff.
Access to rotation. So like you were saying, where like you're saying it's similar to a throw. It is the same motion of the throw. The only thing that's happening is, get this up. Need a bigger room. So when I go to make the backswing load, all that's happening here is, instead of me going into an overhand swing, my shoulder's just brachiating and dropping into a floor swing. So the shoulder's even loading and releasing in the same manner as the throw. It's just, we've got a different tool in our hand. It's all the same math. We're all built on the same bone structures and ball and socket joints. We all created the same tools to play into kind of that same behavior. So it's all just one mathematical sequence, and we're just trying to play to it.
So how are like you and your dad helping players implement that in like swing drills, and like how are you showing players to do that? I mean, is it just pure education?
We really just get them to feel it. We use a lot of what we have these things called chucks, which are basically these little. See if I have it. They're just these little mini slants that, I mean, it's like a little triangle slant that we can slip underneath the heel as kind of a reference point, so they know if they're dumping into that point. We'll have them put like a towel underneath their heels so that they can feel, like a rolled up towel, so they can feel whether or not they're dumping back into that heel, just to give them reference to get onto that outside structure of the foot. As far as back chain, we have them do a lot of wall work where we put the butt against the wall. We get our heels up off the ground with our feet straight, about fist width distance apart. And we just do kind of air chairs for time, where we keep that chest forward off of the wall and just kind of maintain that kind of squeeze the plate position. You can even take a 10-pound plate and squeeze it. And then we'll do that in that bow setting and with the butt high in that corner setting, just keeping that belly button towards the ground the whole time. And you can see where if I'm doing that, I'm kind of already in that golf swing behavior. So now if I just let the arms relax, I'm training that golf swing behavior, just sitting up against the wall for time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, I just want to reiterate, so people need to watch this video so they can see all these movements, because it's easy stuff to implement, but I can see the benefit.
It really is.
And there's a lot less risk for injury.
In implementing it, we do have a program called Recode 225. If you go to recode225.com, that's like an at-home program that we offer. The workouts change weekly. It's all GOATA-based movement that you can do in that gym setting. It's really good just for anybody trying to, whether you're trying to go out and enjoy gardening or you're trying to play golf at a high level. I mean, it's worth giving a shot, at least for that month, and you'll feel the difference within the first 2 weeks.
Spell that out again so everybody knows.
It's RECODE 225.com. That's Recode 225.
Recode, gotcha. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely link to that too. And it just sounds like something. I'm going to start doing that too, because I want to get more. I was going to say more healthier, but I caught myself. I want to get healthier, man. I want to feel better.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do an assessment for you as well. I'll send over the instruction and everything, and we can get you started. I'll let you know how I can help and send you a little basic regimen you can get started on.
Well, and I'll tell you what too. Well, let's talk a little off camera about this. I got an idea about that. But lastly, what's the latest with TrueSpeed?
So TrueSpeed, it's doing well. We've got our patent. We received our patent last February, so we're just still trying to get it into everybody's hands. I mean, we've got one girl that just got back from UTSA that they just won a tournament, and she's picked up 8.5 miles an hour at 5 foot nothing. So that's pretty good. We've got 5 or 6 tour players now that are using it, so it's starting to spread out.
I was actually just at that tournament. I had a bunch of players there. It was in Chattanooga where I am.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got to see a lot of the UTSA players because one of my teams was in the final group with them. Good squad.
Yeah.
Good players, man. So that's really cool. But yeah, so again, everybody needs to check out TrueSpeed. That's TRUSpeed.com, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because I mean, I use it in my academy. I like it better than the other versions on there. Just that ball and chain kind of effect in the end, I feel like helps the swing mechanics as you're doing it so much better than just the stiff board.
Absolutely. And that's kind of why we created it. We wanted the average amateur golfer that doesn't necessarily have a coach out there that's going to train them through these movements to still be able to do this safely and without pain, and translate it over to going to the first tee, as opposed to training all that speed and then heading to the first tee, getting the hands involved and sending one way over the top. Because what's all that good speed without being able to find your golf ball, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and again, I mean, I'm assuming if you take some of these training aids and just they say swing hard and you just go out there, I'm assuming it could be the same effect, right? If you're doing it improperly, you could probably hurt yourself. I mean, there's got to be a point where you start going too fast and you're gonna damage something.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes across the board, even in the training too. I mean, we've got some GOATA movements that I'm updating right now. There's some basic ones in there that we use for our warm up that we give you. We give you a little bit of kind of like a 2-month little mini regimen that you can do at home. That's all ground based. That is easy for people to do. They can do it anywhere. That way we're building that speed safely, because that's most important. Is I want to be able to do this for as long as I can, not just do it because I enjoy it right now.
Right on. Well, Hunter, I appreciate it, man. I could talk about 100 more things, but I think this is a lot of information.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, you got me thinking about a lot of stuff too, and I'm excited to implement it. And hang tight here because I want to talk a little more about the training program and stuff. But I really appreciate it, man. Hunter Gathright, again, you listed your websites, any other places that people can find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Gathright Golf __ GOATA, I believe is what it is. Let me check it just to make sure.
That's when you know you're not a huge social media buff right there.
I've got a few of them. Gathright Golf _ GOATA. That's GATHRIGHT Golf _ GOATA.
What are you posting up there? Are you posting exercises and stuff, or?
Yeah, I'm posting exercises. I post educational videos for GOATA, all sorts of good stuff. Sometimes some funny memes, so you get a little laugh if you're in that GOATA world where you understand all the crazy stuff we do. So
yeah, right on. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. We'll let you go. But this was a great
thanks for
talk.
having me.